Okay, let's begin with breaking news. A plane and helicopter collision has sparked a desperate search and rescue operation in the U.S. state of Virginia. We're looking at live pictures there of the scene. The American Airlines commercial plane and a military helicopter crashed near the airport in Arlington County. News agencies are citing the U.S. Army that 3 soldiers were on board that helicopter. Now, we know at least 2 bodies have been recovered so far. All takeoffs and landings have also been stopped at the Ronald Reagan National Airport. Emergency services are at the scene. Let's go straight to our correspondent, Shiab Ratanzi. He is now live for us in Arlington, Virginia. He joins us on the phone. Shiab, it's been about 2 hours now since that collision took place. What more do we know about what is going on at the moment?
We're actually on the banks of the Potomac, directly opposite the scene of the crash. We now know American Airlines 5342 was coming in to land just before 0200 GMT when it collided with an Army Black Hawk helicopter. There were 60 passengers on board this American Airlines flight, 4 crew, and there were 3 aboard the Black Hawk helicopter. Now, as you can imagine, there's a desperate search underway for survivors. The latest information we had was that at least part of the fuselage of the airplane is submerged, and the divers are on the way. Up to this point, we've mainly seen the boats from the Coast Guard and from the fire service and local authorities who are, if you're watching the live pictures, you can possibly see the red flashing lights. Those appear to be the boats that have just actually emerged en masse on the scene, or rather a fleet of them just emerged. Clearly what we're all concerned about now is whether anyone will be able to survive the cold temperatures of the Potomac currently, or, the risk of hypothermia is very real. But from what we understand, the divers haven't yet arrived. We did see helicopters, though, that have been combing the Potomac for some time now with their searchlights, looking for anyone who may be in the Potomac. But again, it's all very, very sketchy right now as far as confirmed information. I can say, though, that NBC is reporting the FBI is saying there's no indication of criminality or terrorism involved in the mid-air collision, and that we are getting fragmented reports. Senator Ted Cruz tweeted that there have been fatalities. We're hearing reports that some sort of staging area potentially for a morgue has been set up nearby. But right now, I would take everything we're saying with a little bit of a grain of salt. This information can change pretty rapidly. But the scene right now is a desperate search for survivors.
Absolutely, Shiab. We're still very early into the rescue operation. As I mentioned a little while ago, about 2 hours since that plane crashed into that helicopter, that military helicopter. We are looking at the live pictures. It is hard to tell exactly what is happening. It is after 11 o'clock at night, I believe, where you are. It is dark. It is freezing cold. We're hearing reports that the plane has split in 2 with some of the planes submerged in the water. The helicopter's also upside down in the river, we hear. Again, according to reports, you are at the scene. Can you describe to us a bit more about what you can see and what you can feel? For those of us watching, describe how cold it is over there and how challenging it must be to carry out a rescue in these conditions.
Well, actually, it's not as cold as it has been on recent nights. We're about 4 degrees Celsius right now, so we're not sub-zero right now. It has been very, very cold for the last 2 weeks. However, that is still very, very cold, and we understand the water temperatures are very, very, very cold. It's a moonless night, which isn't helping any rescue efforts as well. But we can just see that bank of flashing lights I'm sure you're looking at as well. And, given, we never want to assume or try and figure out what's going on without the actual proper information. But I think we can only assume then that if these reports are true, that at least part of the aircraft is submerged, another part isn't, then we can only assume that those lights are surrounding the fuselage. But I suppose what's really concerning is the video that was taken from a nearby camera I believe, at the Kennedy Center, which is an arts venue, and eyewitness reports which suggest there was some sort of when the collision occurred, there was some sort of fireball potentially, and then the plane just dropped out of the sky. So that's really what's so concerning. This is a really busy flight path. The DCA has flights every few minutes, clearly taking off, landing. It's also really busy airspace for helicopters, for other planes, but everything theoretically should be meticulously guided on these flight paths. It's very difficult. You don't get clearance to fly on these flight paths unless everything is being theoretically meticulously tracked. And of course, the technology these days means that such a collision shouldn't happen. There should be so many warnings that would be both in the helicopter and the aeroplane if a collision is imminent. But again, these are questions for tomorrow and elsewhere. Right now, I think the question is, has anyone survived?
Indeed. Okay, Shab, good to talk to you. We'll leave you there for now as you collect more information. Shab Ratansi there for us, as he said, near the scene of the accident at the Potomac River. Let's get more with Keith Mackey. He's an aircraft accident investigator and an aviation consultant. He's also a retired pilot who has flown into Reagan National Airport many times. He joins us live from Ocata in Florida. Keith, many thanks for your time today. So there's a lot to unpack about what might or might not have happened. But I want to start first with the rescue operation, which is underway right now. We can see from the pictures, the live pictures, that clearly there's a massive emergency response underway. A race against time, I guess, at this point, to try and get anyone out alive. Tell us about the challenges involved.
Well, we're concerned primarily about the water temperature, which I understand is about 4 degrees centigrade. And the survival rate is about 15 to 20 minutes in waters that temperature. Now, it's possible that they could survive for longer. The question is, did they survive because of the damage occurred during the crash or because of hyperthermia? We really don't know at this point. It's an unusual situation in Washington. The airport is located very close to the center of Washington. The flight paths go along the Potomac River, which divides the city of Washington to Virginia on the left side of the river. In this case, we have found out that the airplane was landing toward the north on runway 33. So Virginia would have been to its left. And in the vicinity of the airport is the Pentagon on the Virginia side. On the right-hand side would be the city of Washington. So it's a very congested area. It's a very busy airport. There are actually 3 runways there, but they intersect. So you can't treat them as if they were parallel runways. So the airplane departing would have to wait till it was clear on an airplane landing. So that'll be a consideration. Now, my understanding is the collision occurred somewhere around 400 feet. Helicopters would generally fly at that altitude in that area, but the aircraft, of course, would be descending from a higher altitude on its approach course. The controller, we understand, called the helicopter pilot and asked him if he had the airplane in sight. I don't know what the response was, but the pilot of the airplane would be looking down through all those lights that you can see on your television right now. So it's very difficult to pick out the helicopter in that congestion of lights. It would be easier for the helicopter pilot to see the airplane, but we don't know if that happened. So all these things will...
Apologies, Keith. Given everything you've described, given the fact this is a very sort of congested airspace, a very controlled airspace, we know there are a number of military bases in the area near the airport. How could something like this even happen? How would the 2 sort of planes and the helicopter have even managed to get that close to each other?
Well, that's a very good question. The airplanes go up and down that approach course all day long. That's basically the only approach to the airport is north up the Potomac River if the winds are out of the north, and south down the Potomac River if they're out of the south. So the airplanes never stray very much than the center line of the Potomac River. Now, the helicopter, that's a different situation. The airplane pilots, we can be pretty well assured, fly into that airport regularly, and they're very used to the control procedures. The helicopter may have been from somewhere else. It'll be interesting to find out where they were based and what knowledge they had of the area. And that'll, of course, be a part of the investigation.
You mentioned that it was freezing cold. Can you tell us a bit more about what the rescue operation would actually involve at this point? Our correspondent was telling us that the divers are not yet at the scene. What is the priority right now?
Well, the priority would be to get to the aircraft, depending on how badly the aircraft is broken up. There was a report that the fuselage, or at least a portion of it, was floating. That would be a good sign if that were true, but we'd want to get the passengers out of the aircraft, obviously, and into a warm environment or some kind of a shielded environment where they could get medical aid, if in fact there are any survivors. And we don't know that one way or the other. We had a report that 4 people were pulled from the aircraft, but the report didn't state if they were bodies or living people. So I'm sure we'll find out in a short order what the true situation is.
What can you tell us about this commercial aircraft? 60 people on board, we believe, or around 60. I mean, would you consider this a big aircraft?
No, it's a relatively small aircraft. It's operated by American Eagle, which is a subsidiary of American Airlines, but it is a different airline entirely. And they operate smaller jets and smaller turboprop aircraft. We haven't heard the aircraft type yet, but this would be consistent with what would be going into Washington Reagan Airport. The main airport for Washington is Dulles Airport, where international flights would arrive. But that's about 25 kilometers to the west, and it's quite a ride from there into the city. So people generally prefer, when possible, to get flights that go into Washington National, or Reagan, as it's called.
And these reports that we're getting that the plane has split in two with the helicopter now upside down in the river, is that unusual to you?
Well, I'm a bit surprised that they're in shallow enough water so that they'd still be floating. I assume they're floating, but my impression is the river's deeper in that area. So the result would have to be that they were floating, or the fuselages were floating. And that's a good sign. If there are people or survivors on board, perhaps we can get some more folks out, or I'm sure they've done so by now. I think we'll have some figures on survivors, or lack thereof, soon.
Okay. Keith Mackey, thank you so much for your time today. Keith Mackey is an aircraft accident investigator and an aviation consultant.